In the midst of the joy and elegance of a fancy wedding ceremony, a single unfortunate incident disrupts the magic. The groom, without pause, slapped the bride. But what he didn't know was that this would be the start of an incredible journey leading to some amazing changes. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom shimmered like a crystal palace on that special June evening, its chandeliers casting diamond-like reflections across the faces of New York's elite. Angela Morrison stood before the full-length mirror in her stunning Vera Wang wedding dress, her fingers trembling as they traced the delicate lace sleeve. The reflection showed everything she had dreamed of since childhood. The perfect bride, the perfect venue, the perfect life waiting to unfold. Despite the glamour, her emerald eyes, usually bright with determination, held a subtle shadow that only the most skilled makeup artist could reveal. "Miss Angela, your mother's Cartier necklace looks absolutely stunning," her personal stylist, Maria, gushed, adjusting the $175,000 piece that graced her neck. "The whole Upper East Side will be talking about this wedding for years." Angela's penthouse suite at the Pierre Hotel, where she'd spent the morning preparing, offered a commanding view of Central Park's lush expanse. The room itself was a testament to extravagance. Champagne flowing from crystal flutes, exotic flowers worth thousands adorning every surface, and a team of professionals fussing over every detail of her appearance. "Harper should be here by now," Angela said, glancing at her Patek Philippe watch, a small engagement gift from Henry worth more than most people's annual salary. Just as she'd hoped, Harper Matthews appeared right on time, her Louboutin heels making a soft click against the marble floor. "I'm so sorry, Angela. Traffic on Fifth was crazy, even with the Bentley's driver taking shortcuts." Although Harper looked apologetic, Angela chose to ignore the tension in her voice. "But I'm here now, and you look stunning," Harper said, her voice taking on a softer tone. Angela attempted a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Try $50 million, she teased, her smile faltering as she approached her best friend. In a lower voice, she added, "Are you sure about this, Angela?" After what happened at the rehearsal dinner, Angela instinctively moved her hand to cover her wrist, where a Bulgari bracelet concealed a fading bruise. "Henry was just stressed about the merger. You know how much pressure he's under with the Thompson deal." Angela had been a promising interior designer, transforming Manhattan's most exclusive properties with her innovative vision. Then she met Henry Pierce III at a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He was the epitome of the Upper East Side success, a Harvard Business School graduate, heir to Pierce Industries' billions, and with a smile that could charm board members and socialites alike. Their whirlwind romance was the talk of the town, featured in Page Six and celebrated at all the best places, like the Rainbow Room and Per Se. There were also subtle changes that weren't in the news, but spoke volumes. Her design firm was closed so she could focus on their future together, her vibrant social circle shrank to the people Henry approved of, and her phone was regularly checked by Pierce Industries' IT team for security purposes. "Miss Pierce, I'm here to remind you about the prenup signing," Maria said, holding out a Mont-Blanc pen. "The lawyers are waiting in the suite next door." Harper's face showed a hint of concern. "The prenup? Now? An hour before the ceremony?" Henry's mother really wanted to make a few last-minute changes, Angela explained. Her voice was neutral, just standard provisions about company protection. The prenuptial agreement, delivered by Kelsey Pierce's personal legal team, was not at all standard. Its 100 pages of clauses and conditions were packed with detailed provisions, ensuring that every aspect of the marriage was covered. With 300 guests, including the governor, 2 senators, and the cream of Manhattan society already seated, Angela felt the weight of expectations, and she was determined not to let anyone down. Just as Kelsey Pierce was about to enter, a sharp knock sounded. Henry's mother, looking stunning in Chanel and wearing Harry Winston diamonds, surveyed the room with her critical eye, just like she did in Pierce Industries' boardroom. "Angela, my dear, you look fitting," Kelsey said, her lipstick smile not reaching her ice-blue eyes. "Though I still think the Dior would have been more suitable. Now, about those papers." "Mother Pierce," Harper stepped forward, her voice steady despite Kelsey's intimidating presence. "Surely this could wait until after the ceremony?" Kelsey's gaze was so intense it could have frozen the Hudson River. "Miss Matthews, we really appreciate your friendship with Angela, but family matters are family matters." The next hour flew by as they worked on the documents, making sure everything was just right. Angela felt a bit disconnected, as if watching herself from far away, but she kept her focus. The girl in the mirror nodded at the right moments, smiled on cue, and played her part perfectly. Then came the moment that would change everything. The plaza's ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland despite the summer heat outside. Thousands of white orchids and crystals created an ethereal canopy above the guests as Wagner's Wedding March began to play on the string quartet's priceless instruments. Angela stood at the entrance, her father beside her, ready to walk her down the aisle. "Princess," James Morrison said, his concern clear in his voice, "you know you can still—" "Daddy, please," Angela whispered, her grip tightening on her bouquet of rare blue roses. "Everything is perfect. Everything has to be perfect. But perfection, like the crystal glasses adorning the reception tables, was about to shatter." As Angela began her elegant walk down the aisle, she caught sight of Henry at the altar. His handsome face, often seen in Forbes and Fortune, looked calm and unruffled, unlike the fury she'd seen the night before. But there was something in the way his fingers clenched and unclenched that sent a thrilling shiver down her spine. The ceremony unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance, each word and gesture rehearsed to perfection. The 7-tier wedding cake, the vintage champagne, the surprised gasps as doves were released into the evening sky. Everything followed the script Kelsey had meticulously planned. But then, something unexpected happened. During the reception, Angela was speaking with the French ambassador when she felt Henry's hand clamp around her arm. His whisper, meant for her ears alone, carried the familiar edge that usually preceded his darkest moods. "I saw you talking to Richard earlier." "The help, Angela? Really?" Richard, the handsome young sommelier who had simply recommended a wine pairing, had shown Angela more genuine kindness in that brief interaction than Henry had in months. Perhaps that's why she did something she'd never dared before. She pulled her arm away. The slap made a loud noise that filled the whole ballroom, like a gunshot, and it stopped the orchestra and the dancers in their tracks. Angela felt her cheek burn, but it was the public humiliation, the collective gasp of 300 of New York's most influential people, that truly stung. In that moment of quiet, as champagne bubbles rose in empty glasses and the orchestra's sheet music fluttered to the floor, Angela saw her reflection in every shocked face in the crowd. In that moment, she finally understood the truth she had been trying to avoid. This wasn't the beginning of her happily ever after. It was the end of her silence. The aftermath of the wedding reception unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of damage control. Kelsey Pierce's network of connections sprang into action with practiced precision. By morning, Page 6 had transformed the incident into a charming anecdote about passionate newlyweds, while social media posts mysteriously disappeared from guest accounts. The Pierce family's public relations team worked tirelessly, spinning tales of champagne-induced misunderstandings and romantic intensity. Angela found herself ensconced in Henry's penthouse at 432 Park Avenue, Manhattan's tallest residential tower. The $95 million apartment, a wedding gift from Pierce Industries board, offered spectacular views of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. To Angela, though, they felt more like the bars of an exquisitely appointed cage. "The Ashcrofts have invited us for dinner at Le Bernardin," Henry announced one evening, adjusting his Brioni suit in the mirror. "Kelsey says it's crucial for the Thompson merger." Angela looked up from her untouched beluga caviar, her reflection fragmenting across the crystalline dining table. "I'm not feeling well," she said, her voice waning. "Perhaps that wasn't a request, darling," Henry replied, his tone gentle but his eyes firm. "The new Oscar de la Renta? Kelsey had it specially curated for you." The dress in question hung like a beautiful thread in their walk-in closet. Every piece in Angela's closet now had Kelsey's stamp of approval, each chosen to show off the perfect image of Pierce Industries' daughter-in-law. Even Angela's personal shopper at Bergdorf's had been replaced by Kelsey's trusted stylist. Life settled into a gilded routine. Mornings began with Kelsey's assistant delivering a schedule of approved social engagements. Lunches were meticulously planned, with appearances at Manhattan's most exclusive venues, where Angela exuded her role under the attentive gaze of Kelsey's social circle. Evenings were reserved for Henry's business engagements, where Angela stood by his side as the perfect corporate wife, her smile as practiced as her silence. While on the surface, all was well, beneath the surface, there were some tensions. Henry's control grew more and more intense with each passing day. Her phone calls were monitored, her credit card statement scrutinized, and her every movement tracked by the building's security team. Even her former colleagues from the interior design industry stopped responding to her messages, discreetly informed that Pierce Industries might reconsider their contracts. Henry tried to explain, saying it was for her own protection, but it was hard not to see the pain in his eyes when he said it. "You know how dangerous the city can be for someone in your position. Remember what happened to the Vanderbilt heiress last summer? The threats were always veiled, wrapped in concern and sealed with designer gifts. After each episode of controlling behavior, a new piece of jewelry would appear. A Van Cleef and Arpels necklace, a rare Patek Philippe watch, a Cartier bracelet. It was as if each gift was another link in a chain that was getting heavier and heavier. Kelsey's influence was especially insidious. She would orchestrate weekly family dinners at Daniel, where she would gently point out every perceived flaw over perfectly plated French cuisine. "Honey, you could really work on your table presence," Kelsey would say, her voice full of concern. "Remember how you held your fork at the Morgan Stanley dinner? People noticed, and that's all that matters." And as she saw it, that simply wouldn't do for a Pierce woman. The only respite came from Harper, who refused to be intimidated by the Pierce family's power plays. Despite Kelsey's attempts to exclude her from their social circle, Harper stood her ground and kept her weekly lunch dates with Angela at their favorite cafe in the West Village. "You don't have to live like this, Angela," Harper said, in a quiet voice so that the security detail wouldn't overhear. "My cousin works at Kellerman and Ross. One call, and we could have you out of there with enough evidence to—" "It's not that simple," Angela interrupted, her hands shaking as she reached for her Hermes bag. "Henry's lawyers have everything locked down. The prenup, the NDAs, the corporate entanglements. If I go after him, I'll lose everything." "You're already losing everything that matters," Harper countered, sliding a business card across the table. "Just keep this, please." But it wasn't Harper's lawyer who would ultimately change the balance. It was Richard, the sommelier from the wedding, whose path unexpectedly crossed Angela's again at a charity wine tasting at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. "Mrs. Pierce," he greeted her formally, but his eyes held the same genuine warmth she remembered. "The 1982 Lafayette Rothschild might interest you. It's known for its complexity and hidden depths." As their paths intertwined at elegant soirees and exclusive events, Richard introduced Kelsey to a world beyond the Pierce family's usual circle. His passion for wine led him to fascinating conversations that even Kelsey's attentive ear couldn't fully capture. Each interaction, though brief, felt like coming up for air after being underwater. At another event, Angela told him, "The Chateau Margaux you recommended was extraordinary," aware of Henry's eyes on her from across the room. "I never knew wine could tell such stories." "Every vintage has its own journey," Richard replied thoughtfully, his steady gaze conveying his deep understanding. "Some need time to break free from their constraints before reaching their true potential." But their growing connection was impossible to ignore. Kelsey's network of social spies reported every interaction, leading to increasingly spirited confrontations with Henry. "Do you think I'm blind?" Henry's deep, rumbling voice rumbled one night, sending a baccarat crystal glass soaring towards the wall. "Do you really think I'm oblivious to how you gaze at him? How you embarrass me in front of everyone who matters?" The next day, Richard was fired from his job at the wine merchant that supplied all of the Upper East Side's elite establishments. His reputation took a hit from rumors and strategic calls. But Henry was resilient. He found work at a small but well-regarded wine bar in Brooklyn, a place that wasn't too far from Pierce Industries' reach. Angela felt a sense of optimism wash over her. Keeping her safe was his top priority, so he set up new security features in their apartment, including cameras in every room and monitoring software on all her devices. He also hired a dedicated team of security personnel to watch over her. Even her weekly lunches with Harper were now supervised visits in public places, always under the watchful eyes of Henry's men. Kelsey's psychological warfare reached new heights, but Henry was ready for anything. She started hosting intimate, mentoring sessions with other elite wives, using Angela as an example of both privilege and subtle inadequacy. "My dear," she would say, her voice warm and reassuring, "we simply must work on your public speaking." She pointed out the moments during Angela's speech at the Children's Hospital benefit where she hesitated, suggesting that they needed to work on her public speaking skills. Each piece of feedback was given with impeccable timing and maximum impact, designed to strip away what remained of Angela's confidence. But beneath the surface, something unexpected was happening. Each time she tried to control her, each manipulation, each public humiliation, it became a part of her strength. Harper first noticed this incredible shift during a carefully monitored lunch at Late Lear. I saw something different in Angela's eyes, Harper later recounted. She had this look in her eyes, like she was thinking ahead, you know? Like she had this plan. You're planning something? Harper whispered playfully, adjusting her Hermes scarf to avoid the security team's lip-reading capabilities. Angela's smile, though, remained perfect, practiced, empty. I'm learning, Harper. They're teaching me everything. All the rules, all the expectations. I'm absorbing it all. The change was subtle, but it made a big difference. Angela started playing Kelsey's game, and she played it with unexpected precision. She hosted dinner parties that were as perfect as a picture, made strategic appearances at important social events, and maintained an image that was as immaculate as a fresh, perfect flower. She became the kind of wife everyone wanted, the perfect Pierce wife. She was so perfect, it was almost suspicious. Even Richard, during their rare encounters, sensed the change. "The Chateau Latour you're bidding on," he said when they had a chance to talk. "It's known for its patience. Years of pressure can create something unexpected." Henry and Kelsey celebrated what they saw as Angela's final surrender to their world. They could see that the leash was loosening a bit. Supervised lunches with Harper weren't as supervised. Social appearances weren't as scripted. But they didn't realize that Angela was carefully cataloging every weakness, every secret, and every pressure point in their carefully constructed empire. The breaking point came during the annual Pierce Industries charity gala at the Mandarin Oriental. Angela, looking stunning in a custom Valentino gown, nailed her role. She charmed the board members, dazzled the investors, and maintained the precise balance of grace and submission that Kelsey had demanded. As she stood beside Henry during his keynote speech, watching him bask in the adoration of New York's elite, Angela felt something shift inside her. The diamonds, the designer dresses, the social connections. It was all a bit much. Later that night, as she stood in their penthouse bathroom staring at her reflection in the gold-rimmed mirror, Angela made a decision. The woman looking back at her wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. She was preparing for war. With a surge of determination, she picked up her phone and sent a text to Harper. "I'm ready." The stage was set, the players were in position, and the true game was about to begin. Angela had learned her lessons well, perhaps even too well for those who had taught them. As she snuggled into bed next to Henry, her mind was awash with possibilities, each more thrilling than the last. The next morning, she would wake up and play her role perfectly, as she had been trained to do. Every smile was a meticulously crafted move, every polite nod was a clever strategy, and every impeccably arranged detail was another step towards something they didn't see coming. In the dazzling world of Manhattan's elite, where appearances were everything and power was the only currency that mattered, Angela was about to show that the most dangerous player was the one who had nothing left to lose, except the golden chains that bound her. The captivating tale of Henry Pierce III unfolded on a crisp autumn morning at the Four Seasons restaurant, where Manhattan's power brokers had gathered for the annual Financial Excellence Awards. Angela sat at the primary table, beaming as she watched her husband accept another accolade for his visionary leadership of Pierce Industries, when her phone vibrated with an encrypted message from an unknown number. Asterisk, your husband's first wife didn't die in a sailing accident. Check the Cayman Islands trust accounts from 2019. If friend. Asterisk, Angela kept her cool, but she was rattled. Henry had never mentioned being married before, and Kelsey's meticulously curated family history made no reference to a previous marriage. But there was something about the message that resonated deeply, stirring up feelings she'd buried long ago. That evening, during a charity auction at Sotheby's, Richard managed to slip her a thumb drive while they were discussing a rare vintage of Domaine de la Romanée-Conti. "Sometimes the truth lies in the sediment," he whispered, his voice tinged with excitement, before he blended into the crowd of billionaire collectors. Angela was working late in her private study, ostensibly reviewing plans for the upcoming Pierce Foundation Gala, when she accessed the drive using a secure laptop Harper had provided. What she found shattered her already fragile world. Offshore account statements, private investigator reports, and medical records that told a story far darker than she'd imagined. Victoria Ashworth Pierce, Henry's first wife, had indeed existed. She was a smart financial analyst from a long line of wealthy families. In early 2019, she started asking questions about Pierce Industries' accounting practices. 3 months later, her yacht was found abandoned off the coast of St. Barths. While the official report stated it was just an accident, the private investigators' files hinted at something more. "The same team that handled Victoria's accident is watching you now," Harper revealed during a spa day at the Mandarin Oriental, their conversation masked by the sound of flowing water. "My contact at the FBI confirmed it. They're known as the cleanup crew, elite fixers for the ultra-wealthy." Angela felt the walls closing in, but she also sensed an opportunity. "We need proof," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soothing background music. "Something concrete enough to break through their wall of lawyers." The next few weeks were an exhilarating dance of appearances and investigation. Angela was the perfect corporate wife, but she also built a network of unlikely allies. She met with a junior accountant at Pierce Industries, who had a modest background and was overlooked. He gave them access to internal audits. She also met with a disgraced former board member. He had a grudge against Kelsey and offered insights into the company's darker dealings. But it was Richard who proved most valuable. His position in the wine world gave him access to private conversations among Manhattan's elite, where tongues loosened by expensive vintages revealed secrets meant to stay buried. "Henry's not just covering up financial fraud," Richard kindly informed her during a wine tasting at the St. Regis. "The Thompson merger you mentioned? It's a front for something bigger. They're using it to hide massive losses from failed ventures in emerging markets." Angela's investigation led her to Rebecca Chun, a former Pierce Industries executive who'd been quietly forced out years ago. They met in a private suite at the Peninsula Hotel, where Rebecca shared a story that connected several disturbing dots. "Kelsey's not just a controlling mother-in-law," Rebecca said, her voice quivering slightly as she twirled her Bulgari bracelet. "She's the mastermind behind Pierce Industries' secret operations. Henry, on the other hand, is the face she uses. She's the one who orchestrated Victoria's removal when she got too close to the truth." Angela felt like she was starting to see the whole situation in a new light. The social events, the constant surveillance, Kelsey's obsession with controlling her image. It wasn't just about maintaining social status. They were keeping her on her toes, distracted, and unable to see the big picture. But Angela wasn't the only one making discoveries. Meanwhile, Henry's paranoia grew as he heard whispers of an investigation through his own network. His behavior became increasingly erratic, his public mask of charm slipping to reveal the darkness beneath. During a private dinner at Per Se, He grabbed Angela's wrist with bruising force. If you think Victoria was clever, you should know she wasn't the first person who tried to expose us. This family has survived for generations by dealing with threats permanently. The threat was clear, but it came with an unexpected revelation. Angela realized that Henry's marriage to Victoria hadn't been his first. There were others, their stories silenced by accidents or strategic moves, their wealth absorbed into the ever-expanding Pierce empire. Kelsey, ever the strategist, sensed the shifting dynamics. She ramped up her psychological warfare, but now Angela saw right through her tactics. Every encounter with Henry's former flames, every subtle reminder of her potential to be replaced, fueled Angela's determination. The turning point came during the annual Pierce Industries board retreat at the Ritz-Carlton in the Cayman Islands. Angela, playing the role of a devoted wife, used her access to photograph crucial documents while Henry was in meetings. But she wasn't the only one with an agenda. "I know what you're doing," a voice said behind her as she stood on her suite's balcony. It was none other than James Thompson, the CEO of Thompson Global, their supposed merger partner. "And I want in." Thompson revealed that the merger was a trap. Pierce Industries was planning to take advantage of his company, leaving thousands jobless while pocketing billions. He offered to help Angela expose the truth, but his help came with conditions that made her question his motives. Meanwhile, Harper's cousin at Kellerman and Ross had assembled a team of lawyers ready to move against Pierce Industries. As they gathered evidence, Angela discovered a surprising truth. Harper's family had old ties to the Pierces, and her cousin's firm had helped bury Victoria's case. "I swear I didn't know," Harper pleaded during a tense confrontation at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. "My family kept me in the dark. But Angela, I promise you, I'm on your side." As time went on, the web of betrayal and loyalty became more and more complicated. Richard, undeterred by the risks, pressed on with his mission, drawing insights from his network in the luxury service industry. But even he had secrets. His apparently humble position as a sommelier masked connections to European banking families with their own grievances against the Pierces. Angela found herself in a tricky situation, not knowing whom she could trust. The evidence she gathered painted a picture of corruption that spanned decades. Forced acquisitions, environmental disasters covered up with bribes, politicians bought and sold like vintage wines. Kelsey, displaying her trademark tenacity, took the initiative. She set things in motion to help her former interior design mentor, who had mentored Angela, and who was in a position to make things happen. The mentor received an offer he couldn't refuse, but he needed to publicly discredit Angela's professional reputation. "It's nothing personal, dear," Kelsey said during a private lunch at Le Jardin. "Just insurance, you know? You get it, right? In our world, it's always good to be prepared for anything that might come our way." Angela had learned from the best. While Kelsey was busy tearing down her past, Angela was building her future. She had built her own network of supporters, disgruntled former employees, overlooked service staff, and even some of New York's old money families who resented the Pierces' new power. The pieces were in place, and the risks were mounting. Henry's cleanup crew had started following Harper, and Richard reported some intriguing inquiries about his past. Even Thompson's offer of an alliance felt like a carefully laid trap, but Angela was ready for anything. During a wildly successful auction at Christie's, where Henry was bidding millions on a rare Monet, Angela received another anonymous message. *Victoria left a fail-safe. Downtown Storage Unit 237 to 17. Code 051219. Hurry. The discovery of Victoria's secret would change everything, but it also meant Angela had to make an impossible choice. The evidence she needed was within reach, but using it would destroy not just Henry and Kelsey, but also dozens of powerful families connected to Pierce Industries. As she stood in their penthouse that night, watching Manhattan's lights glitter like diamonds in the darkness, Angela faced her moment of truth. She felt like she was wearing armor made of diamonds, like her designer dress was a warrior's uniform. She had learned to play their game, perhaps too well. Tomorrow would bring either her greatest triumph or her final defeat. As she got ready for bed, she put on her perfect wife face, but she couldn't help but smile a little. In teaching her to be the perfect Pierce woman, they had created something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The next morning's headlines would surely cause a stir in Manhattan, but the real earthquake was still to come. The game had shifted from one of escape to one of enduring. It was about justice, revenge, and the price of truth in a world built on beautiful lies. Angela's investigation led her deeper into the Pierce family's history of manipulation and control. During a private exhibition at the Guggenheim, she met an elderly art curator who had worked with the family for decades. As they conversed about the paintings and upcoming auctions, the curator shared something that set Angela's heart racing. "Every generation has its Kelsey," the curator whispered, pretending to admire a Kandinsky. "A woman who maintains the family's power through whatever means necessary. Your mother-in-law," she learned from the best. Her own mother-in-law had a hand in similar accidents back in the 1980s. This revelation added another layer to Angela's understanding. The Pierce dynasty wasn't just about money and influence. It was about control, passed down through generations, with each era bringing new ways to keep their strong hold on New York's high society. That evening, during a private concert at Carnegie Hall, Angela noticed something unusual. Kelsey's usually composed demeanor faltered when she caught sight of an unexpected guest, a sophisticated woman in her 70s who commanded attention despite her understated accessories and subtle Chanel suit. "Margaret Blackwood," Richard whispered, joining Angela with a glass of champagne. "The only person who ever successfully challenged the Pierce family and lived to tell about it, though she lost everything in the process." Angela had arranged a secret meeting with Margaret at the Nui Galleries Cafe. Over delicious Viennese coffee and pastries that felt like gold, Margaret shared her story, a tale of resistance, sacrifice, and survival that mirrored Angela's own journey in haunting ways. "They'll try to isolate you completely soon," Margaret warned, her aged hands trembling slightly as she reached for her cup. When Kelsey started losing control of her first daughter-in-law, she arranged for her to be committed to a private psychiatric facility in Switzerland. The poor girl never returned. Angela felt the weight of these revelations as she attended the opening of a new luxury hotel tower that evening. Henry was there, charming investors with practiced ease while keeping her within arm's reach. His gestures, once a sign of affection, now felt like warnings. Angela, however, was not without her own resources. She had noticed some people who worked at the hotel, and they had seen some of the bad things that had happened to the Pierce family. They were hesitant to discuss it, but they didn't realize it. The head of security at the hotel, Marcus Kane, a former military intelligence officer, proved particularly valuable. He had kept detailed records of every incident he had been asked to handle for the Pierce family over the years. "I've got records of at least 3 cover-ups," Marcus shared, his voice warm with a sense of duty. "I've even got footage from the night Victoria disappeared. I kept it as insurance, but maybe it's time it served a greater purpose." Angela's network of allies was expanding, and so was the excitement. Kelsey's surveillance became more obvious, almost threatening in its visibility. New security personnel appeared in the building, their presence a constant reminder of the family's reach. During a glamorous charity gala at the renowned American Museum of Natural History, Angela overheard a conversation between Henry and one of his trusted advisors that confirmed her worst fears. They were talking about backup plans, ways to handle her if she became problematic, like Victoria. "The facility in Switzerland is still an option," the advisor suggested, his words nearly lost in the background noise of the gala. "Or, we could always fall back on the sailing accident scenario. It worked before." Angela felt compelled to take action. She began making her own preparations, like converting some of her jewelry into cryptocurrency accounts that couldn't be traced, connecting with trustworthy journalists, and planning multiple escape routes. Harper, despite the complicated revelation about her family's connections, proved invaluable in this phase. She helped Angela set up a secure communication network using burner phones and encrypted messaging apps. Most importantly, she introduced her to a group of domestic violence survivors who had rebuilt their lives after escaping wealthy, powerful abusers. The final piece of Victoria's puzzle waited in that downtown storage unit. When Angela finally got into the storage unit, she found something she didn't expect. Not just evidence of financial crimes, but proof of a big conspiracy involving some of New York's most well-known families. Victoria had uncovered a network of shell companies and offshore accounts that went far beyond Pierce Industries. The documents revealed how Manhattan's elite had been protecting each other's secrets for generations, creating an intricate web of mutual blackmail and support. The implications were staggering. Using this information would not only expose Henry and Kelsey, but it would shake the foundations of New York society itself. Angela realized she had the power to not just destroy her abusers, but also an entire system of privilege and corruption. As she returned to the penthouse that night, Angela knew she had crossed a point of no return. The evidence she had gathered was too explosive to be ignored, too comprehensive to be buried. The question was no longer whether to use it, but how to survive its revelation. In the morning, she would wake up next to Henry, kiss him goodbye as he left for the office, and maintain every appearance of the perfect Pierce wife. But beneath that polished exterior, plans were in motion that would change everything. The game had evolved beyond personal survival or revenge. Angela was at a crossroads, facing a much larger battle that would either reshape Manhattan's power structure or destroy her in the attempt. The stakes were higher than ever, and her next move would determine not just her own fate, but also the future of an entire social order built on gilded lies and beautiful deception. Angela's journey began in a private art gallery in Chelsea, where she stood in front of an abstract painting worth millions. She saw herself reflected in its fractured surfaces. The piece, a recent addition to Pierce Industries' corporate collection, depicted a butterfly emerging from a golden cage, a symbol of rebirth and transformation. Regina Winters, a legendary gallerist who had once championed Angela's interior design work, noted, "Your eye for design hasn't diminished, but I bet you see things a bit differently now." This chance encounter, which was carefully orchestrated through Richard's connections, marked the beginning of Angela's professional resurrection. Regina, as it turned out, had her own scores to settle with the Pierce family, who had systematically undervalued and acquired her artists' works through manipulative practices. "Sweetheart, talent doesn't fade just because they try to bury it," Regina said, her voice warm and reassuring as she spoke over lunch at her private club in Tribeca. "The question is, are you ready to reclaim your voice?" Under the guise of curating Pierce Industries' corporate art collection, Angela began rebuilding her professional network. She seized the opportunity presented by Kelsey's dedication to maintaining her public image, using it as a reason to attend design conferences and art fairs. These events were a chance for her to reconnect with old colleagues and make new friends. It was a delicate balance, but she handled it like a pro. During the day, she was the perfect corporate wife, attending board meetings and charity galas with Henry. But in those secret moments, she was carefully laying the groundwork for her independence, using the very skills Kelsey had taught her about networking and influence. "You've learned to move differently," Harper said with a warm smile during one of their supervised lunches at Lou Jardin. "It's like you've finally seen the whole board, like a chess player," she said, her voice warm with support. Angela's journey of self-discovery wasn't just confined to her professional life. She had a special arrangement with Dr. Sarah Chun, a renowned psychiatrist specializing in helping survivors of high society abuse. These sessions were a game changer, helping Angela process the emotional nuances of her marriage. Their sessions, disguised as spa appointments at the Mandarin Oriental, were a chance for Angela to understand the intricate web of manipulation she'd been caught in. Dr. Chun, who had treated other women from New York's elite circles, provided crucial insights into the patterns of control and abuse that characterized families like the Pierces. During one session, Dr. Chun gently reminded her, "Your ability to be hypervigilant and read rooms and anticipate threats isn't a sign of weakness. They're actually survival skills. Now, it's time to turn them into strengths." Angela eagerly began applying these insights to her daily life. She began to see her social obligations as chances to gather information and make connections. Every board she joined became a potential support network, and every social obligation became a chance to strengthen her position. Richard, moving seamlessly through the world of luxury service, became an invaluable partner in her evolution. His wine expertise provided cover for their meetings, while his connections helped her establish secure channels of communication with other allies. "The best vintages," he reminded her during a wine tasting at the St. Regis, "develop their character under pressure. Timing the harvest is crucial." Richard introduced Angela to Sophia Anderson, a Swedish tech entrepreneur who had successfully sued her billionaire ex-husband despite his family's powerful connections. Sophia became a mentor, teaching Angela how to protect herself digitally and maintain secure communications. During a private meeting in her penthouse at 15 Central Park West, Sophia shared a valuable insight. "The golden handcuffs we often overlook are the ones we can't see, the ones that prevent us from moving forward until it's too late." With Sophia's expert guidance, Angela embarked on a new journey, enrolling in coding classes masked as social media management workshops, approved by Pierce Industries' PR team. She mastered navigating the dynamic cryptocurrency markets, creating a financial safety net that even Kelsey's extensive banking connections couldn't trace. It wasn't long before the professional opportunities started rolling in, coming from places she never expected. During a state dinner, she subtly made a good impression on a Middle Eastern royal family, who then asked her to redesign their New York pied-a-terre. Kelsey saw an opportunity to strengthen Pierce Industries' international connections and, without meaning to, gave Angela permission to take on the project. The apartment became Angela's canvas for rebellion, and the results were stunning. Every design choice, while appearing to conform to the client's luxurious expectations, contained hidden elements of resistance and empowerment. Her success on this project led to more commissions, each carefully selected to expand her independent network while keeping up her role as the devoted Pierce wife. During the reveal, the princess said, "You've created something remarkable here," and Kelsey understood more than she let on. A space that appears to conform while subtly encouraging freedom. It's almost as if you and I are kindred spirits, don't you know? Meanwhile, Henry, engrossed in the Thompson merger and his own power plays, was oblivious to the intricate social calendar his wife had meticulously crafted, a strategic roadmap to freedom. Every charity gala she hosted was like a warm hug to her list of allies. And every corporate event was like a step up in the right direction for her position in New York's power structure. Even Kelsey's attempts at control began to backfire. Her insistence that Angela join the board of the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Conservation Committee provided access to art world figures beyond the Pierce family's influence. The gala events during Fashion Week brought her into contact with designers and creative directors who, seeing how talented she was, offered her their quiet support. "You remind me of Coco Chanel," said a legendary fashion editor during a private showing at Bergdorf Goodman. "Not the sanitized version in history books, but the real woman, the one who understood that style could be armor." Angela's inner circle grew, but not too fast or too big. In addition to Harper and Richard, she found allies in unexpected places. A junior partner at Pierce Industries law firm who had witnessed Victoria's case being buried. A society photographer who had documented years of covered-up incidents, and a retired doorman from their building who had maintained detailed records of suspicious activities. Marcus Kane, the security chief at the hotel, was especially helpful in teaching Angela some great counter-surveillance techniques. During casual chats at company events, he showed her how to spot hidden cameras, identify listening devices, and maintain operational security. The biggest mistake they make, he told her while showing her how to sweep for bugs in her office, is assuming that wealth equals competence. Their overconfidence can sometimes create blind spots. As she delved deeper into the Pierce family's secrets, she had to keep her cool. Each new revelation about Victoria, Henry's other victims, and Kelsey's systematic destruction of perceived threats tested her resolve to stick to her carefully crafted plan. During a weekend charity retreat at the Pierce family estate in the Hamptons, Angela had a moment of crisis. As she walked through the beautiful gardens where Victoria had once planted roses, she felt the weight of her predecessor's fate pressing down on her. "You're not alone this time," Harper reassured her during a private call that evening. "You're not the same person they tried to break," Harper said, her voice warm with support. The support of other survivors was essential to Angela's resilience. Through carefully arranged meetings at art galleries and charity events, she connected with women who had escaped similar situations in New York's elite circles. Each woman's story of survival strengthened Angela's resolve and refined her strategy. One of these women, a former socialite who had built a new life for herself after leaving an abusive banking family, taught her the importance of having many different sides to herself. "Let them think they've won," she advised during a casual lunch at Jean-Georges. "The perfect wife, the gracious hostess, the philanthropic face of the family. Play these roles so well they never suspect you've outgrown them. Angela's journey turned into a lesson in strategic patience. She learned to use the Pierce family's own strengths against them. Their obsession with appearance, their reliance on social networks, their assumption that wealth could buy silence and compliance. Even her sessions with Dr. Chin evolved, moving beyond therapy to strategy. Dr. Chun, who had helped other women navigate similar situations, provided crucial insights into the psychology of her opponents. Kelsey's control comes from her own fears, Dr. Chin observed. Understanding her vulnerabilities is the key to protecting yourself from her attacks. As the seasons changed from autumn to winter, Angela's preparation was starting to pay off. Her independent design work, though carefully masked as extensions of Pierce Industries' influence, was gaining recognition in its own right. Her network of allies had grown into a sophisticated support system, each member carefully vetted and compartmentalized. Most importantly, she had learned to turn her trauma into strength. Her heightened awareness had become a finely tuned radar for detecting threats and opportunities. Her ability to read rooms and manipulate social situations, honed under Kelsey's guidance, became tools for building her escape route. During the annual Pierce Industries Winter Gala at the Plaza, Angela caught her reflection in a mirror and was amazed to barely recognize herself. The woman who looked back wasn't just surviving anymore. She was preparing to thrive. Her teal gown felt less like a costume and more like battle armor. Her diamonds, no longer chains, but weapons in her arsenal. "You've changed," Henry remarked that evening, his tone conveying a hint of suspicion. "There's something different about you lately." Angela smiled at him, the kind of smile she had perfected, empty and bright as the chandeliers above them. "I'm just growing into my role as a Pierce woman, darling. Isn't that what you and Kelsey always wanted?" Beneath her warm, welcoming smile, Angela was eager to share the next step in her plan with him. She had gathered evidence, positioned her allies, and tested her strength, all in preparation for the next step. The butterfly was ready to break free from its gilded cage, and the shockwaves would reshape Manhattan's social landscape forever. As she walked through the gala, enjoying the compliments and fitting in perfectly, Angela knew that something special was about to happen. The skills she had gained, the strength she had found, and the network she had built were about to be tested in ways that would determine not just her future, but the future of everyone caught in the Pierce family's web of influence. The following week brought unexpected opportunities for Angela to put her newfound strengths to the test. A crisis at one of Pierce Industries' luxury hotel properties called for her to step in and oversee a complete redesign of the presidential suite. The project was worth millions, and usually, they would have outsourced it to a prestigious firm. Angela convinced Henry and Kelsey that it would be a great opportunity to show the family's personal commitment to excellence if they handled it internally. "You can trust me to represent our family standards," she told Kelsey over tea at the Mark Hotel. "After all, you've taught me everything about maintaining the Pierce image." Kelsey, impressed by Angela's eagerness to acknowledge her expertise, agreed. It was just the opening Angela needed. The hotel project became a chance for her to show off her strategic thinking. She assembled a team of contractors and artisans, some of whom had previously been affected by the family's business practices. Each person brought not just their own unique skills, but also their own motivation for seeing Angela succeed in her larger plan. The marble for the bathroom, "We're getting it from the Castellano quarry in Italy," she excitedly told Henry during a project review. What she didn't mention was that the Castellano family had once owned 3 luxury hotels in Manhattan before Pierce Industries orchestrated their financial ruin. Through this project, Angela also connected with Diane Zhang, a rising star in New York's vibrant real estate development scene. Diane, who had survived her own escape from an abusive business partnership, recognized the signs in Angela immediately. "The trick isn't just getting out," Diane shared, her words warm and comforting. "It's about having a place to land, you know? Let's talk about your future in design. Your real future, not the one they've planned for you." Together, they started laying the groundwork for Angela's independent design firm, hiding their meetings as consultations for the hotel project. Diane introduced Angela to key players in the industry who operated outside the Pierce sphere of influence, each connection carefully vetted and secured. The hotel project was a chance for Angela to show off her business smarts. She brilliantly redesigned the project on a shoestring budget, impressing everyone with her creative flair and financial savvy. But perhaps the best part was that she used the project to build relationships with suppliers, contractors, and other industry pros who would be essential to her future success. "You've transformed a simple renovation into a masterclass in networking," Harper said during a site visit. "They think you're building their empire, but you're actually building your escape route." Even Richard pitched in, using his wine expertise to help design a state-of-the-art wine cellar for the hotel's penthouse suite. Their professional interactions were a perfect cover for sharing information and coordinating with their growing network of allies. As the hotel project neared completion, Angela faced a crucial test of her new capabilities. During the final week of construction, Kelsey's private investigator discovered one of Angela's secure communication channels with Harper. But Angela didn't panic. Instead, she seized the opportunity to turn the situation to her advantage, using the skills she'd learned from Marcus Kane. She thoughtfully crafted a campaign of misinformation, carefully leading Kelsey's spies to believe that Harper was working against Angela's interests. The ruse was so convincing that Kelsey actually warned Angela about Harper's betrayal, unwittingly strengthening their cover for continued communication. Sometimes, Dr. Chun pointed out during their next session, the best defense is letting them think they're winning. You've learned to use their own paranoia as a shield. The success of the hotel project was a significant milestone for Angela. She had impressively demonstrated to her allies that she could operate seamlessly right under the Pierce family's nose, steadily building power and influence while appearing to submit to their control. But more importantly, she had created a plan for how she could one day step out of their shadow. As the crisp winter air settled over Manhattan, Angela's transformation was almost complete. Remember that frightened bride who had stood in the plaza's ballroom just months ago? She had evolved into a strategist capable of playing the long game. Her network of allies had grown into a sophisticated operation, each member carefully positioned to support her ultimate goal of freedom and justice. During the hotel's grand reopening gala, Angela stood beside Henry as he praised her work to New York's elite. She smiled and accepted the compliments graciously, but her mind was already focused on the next step in her plan. The evidence from Victoria's storage unit, combined with what she'd gathered through her growing network, was almost ready to be deployed. As she raised her champagne glass for a toast, Angela caught Kelsey watching her with an unreadable expression. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, Angela wondered if her mother-in-law sensed the change in her. But then, Henry's hand found its way back to her waist, and she remembered that her greatest protection was their certainty that they had broken her spirit. They were about to discover that they had inadvertently crafted a woman who was more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. A woman who had mastered their own game and was ready to rewrite the rules. The beginning of the end came during the annual Pierce Foundation Winter Ball at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The Temple of Dender was stunning, with thousands of imported lights reflecting off the ancient stone, showcasing the diamonds and ambitions of Manhattan's elite. Angela stood at Henry's side in a stunning custom Valentino gown, watching Kelsey work the room with practiced precision. She knew that in her Bottega Veneta clutch rested a USB drive that would shatter their carefully constructed world. The evidence from Victoria's storage unit had proven more explosive than anyone anticipated. It wasn't just proof of financial fraud and covered-up crimes, but a detailed documentation of the Pierce family's systematic destruction of anyone who threatened their empire. It was evident that Victoria had been meticulous in her planning, leaving her killers with a trail of evidence that would lead them to her. "Everything is in place," Richard whispered, pouring a rare vintage of Chateau Lafite Rothschild. "Sophia's team has confirmed the digital dead man switch is active. If anything happens to you, everything goes public automatically." Angela kept her perfect smile as she looked around the room. The guest list was a veritable who's who of American power. Supreme Court justices, Wall Street titans, media moguls, and old money families whose fortunes were intricately tied to Pierce Industries' secrets. Many of them would be collateral damage in what was about to unfold. The first move came from an unexpected direction. James Thompson, their supposed merger partner, approached Henry with news that made him visibly pale. "There seems to be some irregularity in the accounts," Thompson announced loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "My board is quite concerned about certain offshore transactions." Henry's hands gripped his whiskey glass tightly. "James, we should really talk about this somewhere more private." But Thompson, it turned out, had his own agenda. "Henry, I think this is the perfect place, especially after what the SEC will be announcing tomorrow morning." Kelsey appeared at Henry's side, her Chanel smile a bit strained. "Let's continue this conversation in private." As they ventured deeper into the temple, Angela caught Harper's gaze. Her friend was strategically positioned near the museum's main security office, where Marcus Kane had meticulously arranged for crucial surveillance footage to be archived. The confrontation that followed was nothing short of legendary, setting the stage for the most talked-about event in Manhattan's social circles for years to come. It came to light that Thompson had been working with federal investigators for months. The Thompson merger wasn't just struggling. It was a complex and sophisticated sting operation. "Did you really think I wouldn't investigate after what happened to my sister?" Thompson's voice boomed through the ancient stone chamber. "Victoria was my twin, Henry. Did you think I wouldn't seek justice?" Everyone in the room was shocked. Angela watched the color drain from Kelsey's face as she realized the depth of their miscalculation. Victoria's brother had spent years working his way into position, gaining the Pierce family's trust, all while building an incredible case against them. But Thompson's revenge was just the beginning. As security personnel with federal badges began appearing at the party's exits, Angela implemented the next phase of her plan. "I believe these belong in the public record," she announced, connecting her phone to the ball's audiovisual system. The temple's walls came alive with projected documents. Offshore account statements, surveillance photos, confidential reports detailing decades of Pierce family crimes. Henry moved toward her with dangerous intent, but Richard and Marcus Kane stepped forward, their positions carefully planned for this moment. Don't, Richard warned, his sommelier's charm replaced by cold determination. The days of silencing people are over, he said. Kelsey, ever the strategist, attempted to take control. Angela, sweetie, it looks like you're not feeling your best. We can talk about this privately, find you the help you need. Like the help you found for Victoria in Switzerland? Angela's voice carried through the stunned crowd. Or maybe like the sailing accident you arranged when she refused to cooperate? The evidence continued to stream across the temple walls. Photos of Victoria's last days, security footage from the Cayman Islands showing Henry's involvement, documentation of Kelsey's elaborate cover-up operation. But the most incredible piece of evidence came from an unlikely source. Diane Zhang stepped forward, her tablet displaying live feeds from similar scenes playing out across Manhattan. Pierce Industries' satellite offices were being raided, their secret server facilities secured, and their private banking partners surrounded by federal agents. Did you really think Angela was working alone? Diane asked, her voice warm with satisfaction. We're all part of Victoria's legacy. Everyone you've tried to destroy over the years, working together, waiting for this moment. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Board members began receiving frantic calls from their lawyers. Social media exploded with leaked documents and accusations. The carefully constructed facade of Pierce family respectability crumbled in real time. Henry's reaction was, unfortunately, very intense. He lunged for Angela, but she was ready. She deftly evaded his advance, and he ended up crashing into a display case full of priceless Egyptian artifacts. The shattering glass perfectly captured the moment's chaos, serving as a poignant metaphor for the sudden collapse of his world. Henry, security cameras caught all of this, Angela informed him calmly. Just like they caught what happened at our wedding. No more hiding your anger, Henry. Kelsey's usually composed mask showed signs of strain. You ungrateful little, she began, but Angela cut her off. Ungrateful? For teaching me how to navigate high society. For showing me how to navigate high society. For showing me how to manipulate people and maintain appearances. Angela's laugh was cold and clear. You taught me so well, Kelsey. Every lesson about power and control, every tutorial in destroying people's lives. I learned it all perfectly. The arrival of federal agents transformed the charity ball into a crime scene. As handcuffs replaced diamond bracelets and Miranda rights were read to Manhattan's elite, Angela felt a strange sense of unreality. The meticulously planned scheme had unfolded better than they could have imagined. Yet the personal cost was heartbreaking. Families who had reigned over New York society for generations were watching their empires crumble. It was heartbreaking to see children being taken away from their parents, but the future looked bright. Fortunes built on decades of corruption and cruelty were evaporating in real time. You've destroyed everything, Henry snarled as agents led him toward the exit. Our family, our legacy, our entire world. No, Henry, Angela said, her voice gentle. You destroyed it yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. But the night's revelations were just beginning. As federal agents scoured through Kelsey's phone, they uncovered something that even Angela was taken aback by. Kelsey had been planning to offer Henry up as a sacrifice to safeguard the family empire. She had orchestrated for him to take the blame for their misdeeds while she retained control through a network of proxy boards and shell companies. My own son was becoming a liability, Kelsey explained with a calm expression as the agents secured her Cartier bracelets with handcuffs. Sentiment is a luxury we can't afford in our position. It was clear that the betrayal had deeply affected Henry. He started shouting accusations, revealing family secrets that even Angela's investigation hadn't uncovered. The depth of the Pierce family's corruption shocked even the hardened federal agents. Angela remained unfazed, drawing strength from the poise Kelsey had praised her for. She watched as the Pierce empire crumbled, each revelation adding to the destruction of the family that had tried to own her. Harper was there for her, offering a comforting handshake. Victoria would be proud. But the most surprising twist of the night came from an unexpected source. As Kelsey was being led away, she locked eyes with Angela one final time. "You think you've won?" she asked, her voice carrying that familiar note of superiority. "You think exposing our crimes will bring justice? Look around, dear. Look at all these powerful people being arrested. Their children, their families, their employees. Thousands of lives have been ruined. Was your revenge worth ruining so many innocent lives?" The question hit Angela harder than any of Henry's physical abuse, but she was ready to hear him out. She looked around the magnificent temple of Dinder, observing the expressions of people whose lives had just been turned upside down. Children of privilege suddenly facing uncertain futures, employees wondering if they'd have jobs tomorrow, charities dependent on Pierce family donations now at risk. "That's the price of justice," Richard said quietly, appearing beside her. "The truth can be tough, but it's often better to face reality than to live in lies." As dawn broke over Manhattan, the full scope of the night's events began to emerge. They learned that Pierce Industries stock had taken a nosedive, and trading had been halted on exchanges all around the world. The details surrounding the Thompson merger were revealed to be a complex federal operation involving multiple agencies. Dozens of arrests were being made across the city as evidence of widespread corruption came to light. Angela stood on the steps of the Met, watching the sunrise paint the city gold. The weight of Victoria's files in her clutch had been replaced by something heavier: the responsibility of what came next. "Was Kelsey right?" she asked Harper, their eyes alight with possibility as they witnessed another wave of federal agents enter the museum. "Did we cause more harm than good?" "You gave people the truth," Harper answered. "What they do with it is their choice." The media was already gathering, eager for details of the scandal that would dominate headlines for months to come. Angela knew her work wasn't done, and she was ready to continue it. She knew there would be trials, testimonies, and the complex task of trying to ensure that innocent people caught in the blast radius found some way to rebuild. As she prepared to face the press, Angela felt a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. The Pierce family's reign of terror had come to an end, and while the cost of victory was high, Angela felt a surge of determination. The innocent children of guilty parents, the employees who'd been unaware of the corruption, the charities and institutions that would suffer from the fallout, all of them were part of the price of justice. "Miss Morrison," the reporters called out as she descended the museum steps, "did you plan this from the beginning? Was your marriage to Henry Pierce part of a longer operation?" Angela paused, looking back at the Temple of Dinder where her perfect world had shattered. In its place was something harder, colder, but ultimately more real. "No," she answered, her voice warm with emotion. "I wanted to be the perfect Pierce wife. Instead, I became something they never expected, someone who refused to be broken." As the sun rose over a changed Manhattan, Angela realized that the true test of her strength was just beginning. The easy part was exposing the truth. The real challenge would be dealing with the consequences of her actions. The morning brought a new wave of revelations as federal agents combed through Pierce Industries' headquarters in the gleaming tower on Park Avenue. They uncovered a hidden vault in Kelsey's office, and inside it, they discovered decades of blackmail material. This material showed evidence of crimes and indiscretions that had kept New York's elite under the Pierce family's control for generations. The scope of this is nothing short of extraordinary, the lead federal prosecutor declared during an emergency meeting in a secure suite at the Four Seasons. We're looking at potentially hundreds of indictments involving some of the most powerful people in the country. Angela sat in the meeting, still wearing her Valentino gown from the night before, as the full impact of their actions became clear. The evidence she had helped uncover didn't just implicate the Pierce family. It revealed a vast network of corruption that touched every level of society. The Brazilian mining operation wasn't just about profit, an FBI analyst explained, displaying documents on a secure screen. It was a sophisticated money laundering operation involving multiple Fortune 500 companies. The environmental disaster there was deliberately set up to hide the financial trails. As more details came to light, the human cost of the Pierce family's actions became clearer. The accidents that had befallen their opponents weren't limited to Victoria. There were others: whistleblowers, journalists, even family members who had threatened to expose the truth. Each story added another heartbreaking layer to the family's legacy. Richard, who had been by Angela's side all morning, got some urgent news from his contacts in Europe. The Swiss banking authorities have frozen the emergency accounts, he reported. Kelsey's backup plans are falling apart. The whole network of shell companies is falling apart. But it was the personal stories that hit Angela the hardest. As the news of the arrests spread, people began sharing their own experiences of Pierce family corruption. They spoke of being silenced by former employees, small business owners who had been ruined, and families who had lost everything to the family's machinations. During a short break in the proceedings, Angela found herself in the hotel's powder room, facing her reflection in the fancy mirror. The woman who looked back at her was both familiar and strange, still wearing the trappings of Pierce family privilege, but now standing on the other side of their power. "You did what was necessary," Harper said, joining her in the bathroom. "But that doesn't make it any easier to bear," she added, her voice warm and understanding. The day brought a parade of lawyers, federal agents, and journalists, each wanting Angela's perspective on different aspects of the scandal. Angela kept her cool, drawing on years of Kelsey's training in handling the press, but now using those skills to ensure the truth was heard. One particularly poignant moment came when Margaret Blackwood, the woman who had previously stood up to the Pierce family, arrived at the Four Seasons. Despite her age, she carried herself with dignity as she shared her own story of surviving the family's attempts to destroy her. "They take everything from you," Margaret said, her aged hands gently clasping Angela's. "But they can't take who you really are, not unless you let them." As the evening unfolded, it became evident that the Pierce empire was facing significant challenges. The stock market had suffered its worst day since the financial crisis, with multiple companies implicated in the family's schemes facing possible bankruptcy. These ripples were spreading through the global financial system. Henry, who was in federal custody, had started to turn on his own family in an attempt to save himself. His revelations about Kelsey's long-term plans shocked even those who thought they knew the family's capacity for betrayal. During his first interrogation, he said, She was going to have me committed. Her own son. She had the papers drawn up months ago. Angela wasn't the target. I was. Kelsey, on the other hand, remained calm and collected even while she was in custody. When she was shown the evidence against her, she just smiled and asked for her lawyer from Wachtell, Lipton. Her final words to Angela, delivered through her attorney, were both a threat and a prophecy. You'll understand one day, my dear. Power isn't about right or wrong. It's about who survives. And survival always has a price. As night fell over Manhattan again, Angela stood at the window of her suite at the Four Seasons, watching lights flicker in the towers that had once symbolized the Pierce family's power. The city felt different now, as if it were waking up from a collective spell. Richard joined her at the window, and it was clear that his knowledge of wine was just one facet of a much deeper character. The French have a term, he said, l'heure bleue, the blue hour. It's that enchanting moment between day and night when everything undergoes a magical transformation. That's what this is for New York. The next few days would bring more revelations, more arrests, and more unraveling of the complex web of corruption that had sustained Manhattan's elite. But for now, in this moment of transition, Angela allowed herself to feel the full weight of what they had accomplished. Tomorrow will be harder, Harper said, joining them at the window, when the adrenaline wears off and the real work begins. Angela nodded in agreement, knowing that exposing the truth was just the start of something greater. The real challenge, she knew, lay in helping to build a better world from the ruins of the old system. As midnight approached, Angela received one final piece of news. Victoria's brother, James Thompson, had secured control of Pierce Industries' board. His first act would be to establish a fund for the victims of the family's crimes, and Angela was named as one of the trustees. It's not just about justice anymore, he told her over a secure line. It's about healing, about making sure this never happens again. Angela looked out at the city she had helped to change, knowing that her journey was just beginning. The fall of the Pierce family was just the beginning. The real challenge would be facing the consequences of truth in a world built on beautiful lies. We'll have to be stronger than they ever were, she said, her voice alive with possibility as she gazed at the sparkling city lights like a starry night sky. Not to maintain power, but to make sure it never corrupts like this again. The night stretched out before her, full of possibilities and challenges she had yet to face. For the first time since her grand entrance down the aisle at the plaza, Angela felt truly free. The price of that freedom had been high, higher than she'd ever imagined. Now, standing with her closest friends, watching Manhattan change right in front of her, she knew it had been worth every effort. 3 months after the fall of Pierce Industries, Manhattan's social landscape had transformed beyond recognition. The grand ballrooms that had once hosted the family's triumphant galas now echoed with hushed conversations about plea deals and asset forfeitures. The winter season, usually a busy time for charity events and society weddings, had given way to a parade of legal proceedings and congressional hearings. Angela had a front-row seat to this transformation from the penthouse office of the brand-new Pierce Victims Compensation Fund, perched in the very same tower that had been the heart of the family's power. The $95 million apartment that had been her gilded cage was now being transformed into a vibrant resource center for survivors of domestic abuse among the upper classes. "The irony isn't lost on me," she confided to Harper during a late-night brainstorming session. "Using their own weapons to undo their damage. The fund's work had revealed layers of corruption and abuse that even Angela hadn't anticipated. Every day, new victims came forward with their stories, painting a picture of systematic exploitation that spanned generations. The Pierce family's reach extended to every corner of society, from the boardrooms of major companies to the most modest service positions. Henry's trial had become a media sensation, and his public breakdown revealed secrets that shocked even those who thought they knew the family's depths. During one of the most emotional court sessions, he said, "She made me what I am. Every act of cruelty, every accident, every life destroyed. It was all part of her grand design. Even Victoria's death was orchestrated to test my loyalty." Kelsey, for her part, maintained her regal bearing even as her empire crumbled. Even from her detention at a luxury facility in upstate New York, she continued to manipulate and scheme. Her network of influence, though diminished, proved surprisingly resilient. "Never underestimate a wounded snake," Richard warned during a private dinner at his newly opened wine bar in Brooklyn. "Kelsey still has supporters in places we haven't discovered. And wouldn't you know it?" His warning turned out to be right on the money. As Angela worked to rebuild what the Pierce family had destroyed, she encountered resistance from unexpected places. Board members who had initially seemed supportive suddenly became obstructionist. Donations were delayed, but for some unknown reason, vital documents mysteriously vanished from secure servers. Kelsey's contingency plans had contingency plans, explained Marcus Kane, who now headed security for the fund. "We're still finding hidden accounts and buried evidence months later." The most surprising developments came from James Thompson, Victoria's brother, whose own motivations proved more complex than anyone had suspected. During a private meeting in his office at Thompson Global, he revealed information that changed everything. Victoria wasn't just gathering evidence against the Pierces, he explained, displaying a series of encrypted files on his secure terminal. She was uncovering a whole network of families like them, dynasties built on exploitation and abuse. The Pierces were just one of many heads of this monster. Angela felt like she had a clean slate, and she was ready to take a fresh look at everything they had achieved. The Pierce family's downfall had created a power vacuum, and other corrupt dynasties were already moving to fill it. The very systems they had exposed were trying to rebuild themselves in new forms. "Meeting in the old Pierce Industries boardroom feels like tempting fate," Harper said during an emergency session with their core team. The room's windows, stretching from floor to ceiling, offered the same breathtaking view of Manhattan, but now it felt different. Instead of feeling about power, it felt about responsibility. Angela had brought together a special group of people to tackle these new challenges. With Diane Zhang's technological prowess and Sophia Anderson's financial expertise, they were poised to make history. Margaret Blackwood's deep knowledge of old money families was incredibly helpful in understanding the larger patterns of corruption. But it was Dr. Sarah Chun who identified the most critical challenge they faced. "We're not just fighting against corruption," she explained during a strategy session. "We're up against a mindset that's been around for generations," she said. "The belief that power justifies everything." As they delved deeper into Victoria's research, the truth of her words became apparent. The evidence they found revealed a web of relationships between wealthy families. These families worked together to keep their secrets and maintain a front that showed they were respectable. The Pierces were once powerful, but they were part of a larger system of exploitation. "It's like a Russian doll of corruption," Richard said, his expertise in wine now enhanced by his understanding of how luxury industries allowed these networks to flourish. Each layer we peel back reveals another, more intricate system of control. Angela's personal journey continued as she faced these challenges. The skills Kelsey had taught her, like how to navigate social hierarchies, understand people's motivations, and stay calm under pressure, became powerful tools for dismantling the systems that had created them. A significant turning point came during the fund's first major public project. Angela had organized a symposium at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, bringing together survivors, advocates, and reformed members of privileged families. The event was designed to expose the patterns of abuse while offering paths to accountability and healing. But, sadly, even from detention, Kelsey tried to sabotage the event. Her allies in the media started a whisper campaign, suggesting that Angela was using the fund for personal revenge. People were asking questions about her motivations, her stability, and her right to challenge social structures that had been in place for a long time. The night before the symposium, Angela received a package at her new apartment in Tribeca. Inside was a single black rose and a note in Kelsey's distinctive handwriting. Every revolution eventually becomes what it sought to destroy. You'll understand soon enough. But Angela had learned to turn threats into opportunities. At the symposium, she opened her speech by displaying Kelsey's note on the giant screens flanking the Temple of Dender. "This is how they maintain control," she declared to the packed audience. "They do this through fear, through subtle threats. They're always reminding us that power corrupts. But we're choosing a different path. We're choosing to use our privilege and position to create change, not perpetuate abuse." The symposium was a truly significant moment for us. More and more victims bravely came forward. We even saw more and more people from other wealthy families bravely come forward as whistleblowers. More evidence surfaced of systemic corruption. The movement Angela had started was growing beyond her control, becoming something larger and more powerful than she had ever imagined. However, this surge of success also brought new challenges. Other families implicated in Victoria's research began taking action to protect themselves. There were attempts to hack the fund's servers, but our security team was ready for them. Thankfully, Angela's security team intercepted several serious threats. It was becoming clearer and clearer that challenging entrenched power could have serious consequences. "They're afraid," Harper said during a late-night security briefing. "They're not just worried about being exposed, but also about the example we're setting. We're showing them that their power isn't unstoppable." The final twist in the story came from an unexpected source. Among Kelsey's papers, they uncovered evidence that Angela's own family had been part of the network she was fighting against. The Morrisons had courageously chosen to break free from the corrupt alliances generations ago, opting to sacrifice some power and influence to maintain their integrity. "Your grandmother didn't just retire to Connecticut," James Thompson revealed, sharing documents from Victoria's files. "She walked away from everything to protect your father from becoming what Henry became. She chose freedom over power." Angela was deeply touched by this revelation. Her journey, from a young bride to a survivor to a revolutionary, had been shaped by decisions made long before she was even born. The strength she had discovered in herself was part of a legacy she hadn't known she carried. As the first year after the Pierce family's fall came to a close, Angela found herself back at the Plaza Hotel. The grand ballroom, where her wedding had turned violent, was now filled with light and hope, hosting a fundraiser for survivors of domestic violence from privileged backgrounds. The crystal chandeliers, still bearing the scars of her humiliation, now brightly lit the path to healing and transformation. "We've come full circle," Richard said, pouring a special vintage to celebrate. "But this time, we're writing a different ending." The fund's work had expanded beyond just compensating the Pierce family's victims. It had become a beacon of hope, a movement for transparency and accountability among the wealthy elite. Other families, seeing the positive changes in society, were inspired to voluntarily address their own histories of abuse and corruption. Angela's network had also grown and evolved. Harper had set up a legal advocacy group that was all about helping wealthy survivors of abuse figure out their own unique challenges. Richard's wine bar had become a sanctuary where people could share their stories in a private setting. Meanwhile, Diane Zhang's ingenious technology was a game changer, providing crucial protection for whistleblowers within high-ranking families. But Kelsey's warning about revolution continued to weigh on Angela. Each triumph brought fresh opportunities for growth and new challenges to be embraced. Each victory revealed new battles to be fought, and each battle was an opportunity to grow stronger. The systems of power they were challenging had deep roots and long memories, but with each step forward, they felt more and more hopeful for a future of change. "The real test isn't winning," Dr. Chun reminded her during their final therapy session. "It's about holding on to your compassion while standing up against unfair systems. It's important to remember why you started this journey in the first place." As Angela stood at the plaza's ballroom window, she beheld the beautiful sight of snowfall on Fifth Avenue. She reflected on the changes that had come about. She thought back to when she had been that naive bride, accepting abuse in exchange for privilege, and how she had been gone for so long. In her place stood a new person, stronger, wiser. She understood that true power came from breaking cycles of abuse, not perpetuating them. The Pierce family's downfall was just the start of something new. The real work, the hard, complex work of creating lasting change, was still ongoing. As Angela watched the next generation of survivors share their stories in the ballroom that had once symbolized her captivity, she knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. She had learned that the price of freedom wasn't just about escaping one's own golden cage. It was about making sure that those cages could never be built again. 5 years after the fall of Pierce Industries, Angela stood in her office at the Morrison Foundation for Social Justice, watching the sunset paint Manhattan's skyline in shades of gold. The view from the former Pierce Industries tower still commanded attention, but now it served a different purpose, a beacon of hope rather than a symbol of power. The changes in the city's social landscape had been profound. Henry was doing 20 years for his testimony against other corrupt families, and it was still causing ripples in high society. Kelsey, despite her best efforts, had failed to maintain her influence from prison. Her recent appeal had been denied, so she would spend the rest of her life in federal custody. "The latest numbers are in," Harper announced, entering the office with a tablet displaying their quarterly report. Her legal advocacy group had grown so much that they now occupied an entire floor of the building, providing support to survivors from wealthy families all around the world. "We've helped over 3,000 people break free from abusive situations in privileged households." Richard's wine bar in Brooklyn had been transformed into a network of safe houses, disguised as luxury establishments, offering refuge to those in need, including Angela. Richard's talent for creating luxurious spaces had been a lifeline for these survivors, helping them feel comfortable as they started to rebuild their lives. Victoria would be proud, James Thompson shared during their monthly board meeting. His sister's legacy had grown far beyond exposing one family's crimes. The evidence she gathered had sparked a global movement examining abuse and corruption among the world's elite. The Morrison Foundation had become a shining example of how to transform corrupt family enterprises into forces for positive change. Other wealthy families, seeing the shifting social tide, had begun voluntarily addressing their histories of abuse and exploitation. The culture of silence that once shielded abusers in high society was gradually disintegrating. But perhaps the most significant change was in Angela herself. The skills Kelsey had taught her about wielding power and influence now served a greater purpose. She had learned to maintain her own humanity while fighting inhumane systems, to use her privilege as a tool for change rather than control. During a rare quiet moment, Angela visited the converted penthouse that had once been her prison. Now, it was a healing sanctuary for trauma survivors, with its luxurious appointments repurposed to provide comfort instead of intimidation. In the former master bedroom, where she had spent so many fearful nights, a group therapy session was in progress. "Sometimes I look at old photos," she confided to Harper later that evening as they shared a bottle of wine Richard had specially selected for the Foundation's anniversary. The woman in those society pages, wearing designer dresses and perfect smiles, she feels like a stranger now. The final twist in Angela's story had come as a surprise. Her grandmother, the one who had courageously chosen to step away from corrupt alliances generations ago, had left a sealed letter to be opened 5 years after the Pierce family's fall. It was a letter that revealed a network of other families who had also chosen to follow the path of integrity over power. This shadow network, as they called themselves, had been working quietly for generations to protect others from the same fate Angela had narrowly escaped. With the incredible success of the Morrison Foundation, they finally felt safe enough to come forward, adding their much-needed resources and influence to the cause. "Your grandmother wrote that true power isn't about taking from others," Angela said, her voice ringing with excitement as she read the letter, "but in what you can help them reclaim for themselves." As Angela prepared for another evening event at the plaza, this time a celebration of survivors who had rebuilt their lives, she caught her reflection in the office window. The woman who looked back at her wasn't wearing any of the diamonds that had once marked her as Pierce property. Instead, she wore a simple pendant that had belonged to Victoria, which she had found among the evidence in a downtown storage unit. The city stretched out below her, its lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. She thought about how, in those same streets, other people were doing the same thing she was doing, gathering the courage to break free, to speak truth to power, to transform pain into purpose. "Ready?" Harper asked, appearing at her office door. Angela smiled, gathering her things. The work wasn't finished, and neither was she. Together, they had built something Kelsey herself had never imagined. A way to use their privilege and power to dismantle the systems that abused them. "You know what Kelsey told me during her last appeal?" Angela said as they rode the elevator down. "She said I had become exactly what she trained me to be, someone who knew how to wield power. She thought it was an insult, but she was right. I just chose to wield it differently." As they ventured out into the bustling Manhattan evening, Angela felt the weight of all that had changed and all that remained to be done. The cost of freedom was steep, but the rewards were immeasurable. By breaking free from her golden cage, she had helped others find their wings, too. The night air carried the promise of spring, of new life, of continued growth. Angela Morrison, no longer a Pierce, but now something far more powerful, walked into that promise with her head held high, knowing that every step forward helped light the way for others to follow. If this story touched your heart and you'd like to keep following inspiring and moving stories, please be sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that will brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Together, we can continue to explore and share stories that truly matter. I'm positive the next video will touch your heart as well, so click on it now, and we'll see you there.